I have here the new iPad mini. Now, this isn't the major overhaul a lot of people were wanting, like an OLED display or high refresh rate or anything like that. This is a spec bump release. But there are a handful of really interesting updates to this device that give it a nice quality of life improvement. This video is sponsored by Surfshark. Let's get into it. Now let's start by talking about the display, because that seemed to be the thing everyone complained about the 6th generation iPad mini, the previous iPad mini. Now it still has the same LCD IPS panel with LED backlighting. It still has the same 60 Hz refresh rate. Nothing has changed there. Except the number one complaint about the 6th generation iPad mini, which was jelly scrolling. Now on this iPad, the new iPad, the 7th generation iPad, jelly scrolling is fixed. I can 100% confirm that. Now, jelly scrolling, for those that don't know, is when the left side and the right side of the display don't line up, especially like when you're scrolling really fast. That's when you're going to really notice it. It starts to kind of be a little wibbly wobbly, hence where you get the term jelly scrolling from. What I did to make sure it just wasn't a trick of my eyes or anything like that is I took both iPad minis and put them right next to each other and set my camera up for a high frame rate capture. So that way I could really see if there is any wibbling and wobbling and compare the two right next to each other. Now, I'm not sure how well this is going to come across in 24 frames per second video, but I am going to put the demo in here. What you can clearly see is the old iPad mini has the left and right text not lining up when scrolling fast. Now, I am using my website here as the test because I personally notice this a lot on kind of dark mode grayish websites. And on the new iPad mini, the 7th generation one, the text stays perfectly lined up the whole time. Personally, I never thought jelly scrolling was a device breaking issue, but some people just never would let it go. So for those people that were having issues with it, it is completely fixed now. Now, I, like a lot of people, would love a iPad mini Pro, essentially. You know, an iPad mini with an OLED display, maybe a 90 or 120 hertz refresh rate. I would absolutely love something like that, but that's not what this iPad mini is. I mean, if we're going to be honest, if it's going to have an OLED panel and a high refresh display, it's going to bump up the cost quite a bit. And I just don't know if that's where the iPad mini fits right now. The iPad mini has always been in lockstep with the iPad Air and not the iPad Pro. Now, all that being said, it's not like the display on here is bad. It is still a good looking display. I've been reading books on here, comics, and they've been great to read. I've also been reading my RSS feed and read it later apps. Been amazing. And even at night, I've been using it to go through my task manager and calendar just to kind of prep for the next day. It's been perfect for that kind of work. Now, the big change to this iPad mini is the chip. So it went from the A15 Bionic to the A17 Pro. Now, the A17 Pro is the chip that is in the iPhone 15 Pro and Pro Max phones. This is the first generation 3nm process made by TSMC. Now, what's interesting about the chip that's in the iPad mini compared to the iPhone 15 Pro is that this is a binned chip. So the iPhone 15 Pro and Pro Max has a 6-core CPU and a 6-core GPU. Now, this has a 6-core CPU, but a 5-core GPU. Typically, that happens when it becomes a bin chip. For those that don't know what that means, when you're building these chips, a lot of times what happens is you get a chip that comes out and a GPU core just doesn't work. So instead of throwing it away, they become what's called a bin chip because it's still a good chip. But my first thought when reading that the new iPad mini was going to have the A17 Pro is I was worried about the thermals. The iPhone 15 Pro line was notoriously hot. It ran hot. My 15 Pro, I felt like it got hot every single day doing just mediocre, medium tasks, nothing special. But I am extremely happy to say I haven't felt this new iPad mini get hot at all. Not during setup, not during indexing. I also did a little bit of photo editing and video editing on it, and I never felt it get hot. This video is sponsored by Surfshark. Surfshark is a VPN service that protects not only you, but your data. With Surfshark, your data is completely encrypted from the source to its destination, protecting your privacy. Whether you're working from public Wi-Fi in a coffee shop or on the hotel internet, your data and your privacy is secure. Now, this isn't a, well, I have nothing to hide, so I have nothing to lose kind of thing. Data is the new gold, and scary people will do really scary things to get a hold of it. One of my favorite features about Surfshark is they don't keep logs. VPN services that keep logs are defeating the purpose of, well, just using a VPN. With Surfshark, you're also able to change your location, not just within your country, but to other countries as well. So this means if I am traveling abroad, I can remote back into the United States and finish that show I was watching on Hulu. Or if I'm at home, I can check out what UK Netflix has in their library. I really like Surfshark. In fact, it's a service that I've been paying for myself for a few years now. Be sure to go to surfshark.com/lolly to get an extra 4 months for free. My thanks to Surfshark for sponsoring this video. Now, the big surprise to me is that this iPad mini actually runs Final Cut Pro for the iPad. Now, Final Cut Pro for the iPad is supposed to be for the M2 chips and up, and technically the A17 Pro falls into the M3 era line, like it's that same 3nm chip, but I wasn't expecting Final Cut Pro to run on this and it to work at all, basically. Now, processor-wise, GPU-wise, all that stuff, it works great. Now, I edited the ad spot for this video and a couple other videos that are coming out, and a short that's coming out also in the future, all on this iPad mini. Now, this is 4K footage at sometimes up to 120 frames per second, and it worked fine. It didn't feel slow, it didn't feel sluggish, it didn't get choked up on anything, and like I said, the thermals, and it never got hot to my hand or anything like that, like the iPhone 15 Pro did. But because of the screen size, the workspace in Final Cut is very cramped. UI-wise, it worked okay for this kind of short-form video. It worked best when you would close a panel after grabbing an effect or a clip from the library. Now, I wouldn't want to edit a long-form video like this one on the iPad mini. It's just too cramped for that. But in a pinch, if I need to edit a short or an ad spot, or maybe like my iPad Pro dies on me or something like that, this will get the job done. It works. If you're looking for the most portable video editing setup, this is it. Now, this also means Logic runs on the iPad mini. I don't know enough about Logic to really test it, but it's here, and from the demo project, it works fine. I also did a little bit of photo editing as well in Lightroom. I edited a bunch of raw photos from my Canon R5. Just nothing special, just opened them up, did my normal process that I would do, effects, lighting, color balance. Maybe I would use Lightroom's feature to select the subject and select the background and stuff like that. It all worked out great. It worked just like the iPhone 15 Pro. I was kind of expecting it to be that way. It was fast. I was able to get the photos edited and exported. Nothing felt like it was getting hung up or was sluggish. And gaming-wise, I played a few rounds of Bella Outro and Vampire Survivor on this, two really great mobile games. If you haven't played those, they are amazing and extremely addictive. Maybe don't play them if you're like me and you can get addicted to that kind of stuff. I can also confirm that the A17 Pro does come with 8 gigs of RAM, which, as we know, is the bare minimum for running Apple Intelligence. We've heard a few executives talk about that now. I will talk more about Apple Intelligence a little later in this video, but I will say right now, this iPad, when you take it out of the box, if you're getting it on day one, it's going to have 18.0, so don't expect Apple Intelligence to be there right away. I did do a bit of work from the iPad mini. It's me. Productivity and the iPad go hand in hand. I put the iPad mini on an adjustable stand and paired a keyboard and trackpad to it. It was fine. I answered some emails, took some notes, and managed some tasks. It definitely feels like I'm pushing what the iPad mini is designed for here. For me, these are the kinds of tasks that obviously work best on the iPad Pro and iPad Air, and even the base iPad when you pair a keyboard and trackpad with it. For me, the type of productivity that worked best on an iPad mini was small stuff like triaging emails, stuff like archiving and moving stuff to the inbox, not doing long replies. Doing light task and project management, mostly going through what I was going to do the next day, and light note-taking, like making notes about stuff I found online or even tidbits about the iPad mini itself, since I'm reviewing it right now. One of my favorite updates about this new iPad mini is the 64GB option is gone. No more 64 gig. 64 gigs is not enough storage on an iPad. Once iPad OS obviously takes up some space, and then once you get a few games, some photos, music, that space gets eaten up really quickly. So now this iPad mini starts at 128 gigs and has the option to go up to 256 and 512. Before, the iPad mini started at $500 and you got 64 gigs. Now it still starts at $500, but you get 128 gigs. Because the iPad mini got the A17 Pro system on a chip, it got a few other smaller updates with it, including Wi-Fi 6E and Bluetooth 5.3. To me, Wi-Fi 6E is actually a big upgrade. This means the iPad mini can now connect to the 6 GHz Wi-Fi band. Now, I upgraded my router system earlier this year to a Wi-Fi 7 setup. That obviously includes the 6 GHz band. For those that don't know, the 6 GHz band helps with faster Wi-Fi speeds. So something I've been doing, and this started with the iPhone 16 Pro, but I brought it over to the iPad mini as well, is I have been streaming games from my PS5. Now, Sony has a app for streaming games, but I've actually been using a third-party app called MirrorPlay. I just find it works a little bit better. I also got the Razer Kishi Ultra controller. Now, what I like about this controller is it works with both the iPhone and the iPad mini. It has Hall effect sticks, the button clicks are really nice, USB pass-through for charging, all that stuff. So I can put the iPad mini in the Razer Kishi Ultra, my PS5 is in the other room plugged directly into my router, and the iPad mini is on the 6 GHz band, and I'm able to stream games at 1080p, 60 frames per second. There is no noticeable latency. Now, there might be a little bit latency. In fact, I'm sure there's latency because it's all wireless, it's going over the network, but it's not noticeable to me, the player. Now, I did try this with the previous iPad mini as well. With the previous iPad mini, the best it could do was the 5 GHz Wi-Fi band. This did not work well at all. I had noticeable latency issues. The iPad mini and the Razer Kishi Ultra make a great retro gaming device. Using an app like Delta, you can take your ROMs and play your classic games on a much higher quality display than they were originally released on. Plus, this controller is really high quality. But you don't have to specifically use the Razer Kishi Ultra. There are other controllers that will work with the iPad mini, including Xbox and PlayStation controllers. The USB-C port on the iPad mini also got updated as well. Previously, it was USB 3.1 Gen 1, which meant it could do up to 5 gigabit per second file transfers. Now it's USB 3.1 Gen 2, which means it can do up to 10 gigabit per second file transfers. This is a really nice touch if you're somebody that deals with a lot of media, moving stuff around, media cards, whether it's like CF Express cards or anything like that. This isn't something personally I will take advantage of on the iPad mini a lot, but it is something I do with my iPad Pro all the time. And for those that have similar workflows but are just doing it on an iPad mini, will appreciate this. Okay, the iPad mini comes in a lot of different colors. I have the blue option here. And honestly, I'll be surprised if you can see the blue in the video. It's a very desaturated blue. It, to me, looks almost gray with just like a little bit of a pinch of a blue. You know, like when chefs just put like a pinch of salt in? Like that's how much like blue is in there, just a pinch. I don't know why the iPad lineup just can't get really fun and bright and vibrant colors like the iPhone 16. Like that iPhone 16 Ultramarine, if that was in an iPad, I don't care what iPad that was in, I would just buy it. I would love an iPad with an ultramarine color. But yeah, I just, the whole iPad lineup, from the iPad mini to the iPad Pro, it could really do with a touch of color. Now, I also have the denim smart folio cover here. I actually really like this color. I think this is a really nice kind of lighter blue, but it definitely looks like kind of like denim jeans color. It would be funny if they made like a denim material smart cover. That'd be interesting. But it's just like every other smart cover for the iPad mini. There really isn't anything new except it comes in new colors. In fact, because the iPad mini didn't get a redesign at all, the magnets are still in the same place. So if you have a smart cover from the previous iPad mini, it'll work on the new iPad mini and vice versa. So this denim one, if you wanted to take this one and put it on the 6th generation iPad mini, it'll work there as well. Now, one thing that has needed addressing for a while now is the Apple Pencil lineup for the iPads. Basically, every Apple Pencil that was ever made had been on sale up until this point, from the first generation one to the Apple Pencil Pro. There's 4 of them. But with this iPad mini, the Apple Pencil lineup is getting cleaned up. So the Apple Pencil 2 is essentially gone from new iPads. It doesn't work on anything. This iPad mini supports the Apple Pencil with USB-C and the Apple Pencil Pro. And I'm going to go ahead and assume when the base iPad gets updated, whenever that is next, that the first generation Apple Pencil will probably go away as well. So we'll just end up with the USB-C Apple Pencil and the Apple Pencil Pro. But every iPad essentially has two Apple Pencil options, a lower end one and a higher end one. So this iPad mini drops support for Apple Pencil 2. It's just USB-C Apple Pencil and Apple Pencil Pro. Now, you get some nice things with Apple Pencil Pro, like the squeeze gesture and barrel roll. If you're an artist, you can really benefit from those for like speeding up your workflow and stuff like that. And this iPad mini also supports the USB-C Apple Pencil, which has some different feature sets. Apple actually has a really great page now with a graph explaining what features are in what Apple Pencil. I'll put a link to it in the description below. One thing I was really excited to see is that this iPad mini actually supports Apple Pencil Hover. I love this feature. Now, if you're somebody that uses the Apple Pencil as like essentially a mouse, this feature, Hover, acts as kind of the cursor for the mouse. This is what I do a lot with my Apple Pencils. I control a lot of UI elements, and Hover basically kind of is like, okay, this is what you're about to click on kind of thing, and it's just a nice feature for those that use the Apple Pencil in that way. So who's the iPad mini for? The iPad mini is kind of a weird device. You're not going to want to turn this into your main computer. It's not a Mac, it's not an iPad Pro, it's not even an iPhone Pro, where I know there are a lot of people that like carry around a small Bluetooth keyboard and that's their main computer because that's what fits in their pocket and they like that. But I don't know, the iPad mini just never struck me as like a, hey, I'm going to make this my main computer and do all my work from it kind of thing. But it's the perfect e-reader for, well, indoors. I wouldn't want to use this outdoor because it's not an e-ink display. Side note, if Apple ever wanted to make a really good e-reader with like an e-ink display in the iPad mini size, I would instantly buy that. It's also good for just reading comic books and holding it one-handed. I've been reading a lot of Marvel Unlimited and you can just hold it one-handed, and while it's not big enough to do the full page preview, you can just do the panel preview and that works really well. If you want something like a bigger display than the iPhone, this works really well for taking notes, going through your task manager calendar. I do that a little bit, kind of just at night to make sure I'm prepped for the next day. I'm not like forgetting to charge up something because I need to film early in the morning or something like that. And I've even watched movies, shows, and Formula One on this. In fact, earlier this year, I was traveling and I needed to do some work on my iPad Pro, and this was the biggest display I had that wasn't my iPad Pro, so I set up the Formula One app on here, propped it up, and just had Formula One off to the side while I was getting work done. The iPad mini is you probably don't need this device because you have other devices that can do the same task, but there might be a few handful of specific use cases it's really good for, like reading or going through some notes and stuff like that, or just being a secondary device that you travel with. If you're somebody that travels with a big iPad Pro or a big MacBook Pro, this makes for a really nice, like I'm sitting in the airport reading, sitting on a plane watching something kind of device. Now, if you look at Apple's marketing around the iPad mini, you would suspect that this is shipping with Apple Intelligence. It is not. It is 18.0 that it is shipping with. Apple Intelligence is coming later. If you're watching this video in the future, it might already be out, but day one, it will not be there. Even though Apple is marketing this as an Apple Intelligence device, I'm a big believer of what's reviewing in the box. I'm going to make an Apple Intelligence video later on when that actually comes out, but right now I am just focusing on what is in the box. All right, the question that every tech review wraps up with: do you need to upgrade? If you have the 6th generation iPad mini already, and if nothing you do feels sluggish on it or slow and the battery life is still holding up, then no. Just there's nothing really here for you unless jelly scrolling really bothers you that much. And maybe if you're able to get a good price for a trade-in for your 6th generation iPad mini for the new one, then it might be worth it to you. But the other thing to keep in mind is that this iPad mini, again, no longer supports the Apple Pencil 2. So if you're a big Apple Pencil user and you're wanting to upgrade the iPad mini, you're going to have to either get the USB-C Apple Pencil or the Apple Pencil Pro. But if you already have the USB-C Apple Pencil, because that one works on the 6th generation iPad mini as well as the 7th generation, then you're just good to go. But if you're somebody that's coming from a much older iPad mini, one of the ones that still has the home button, or maybe you are looking to get into the iPad mini for the first time, now's a great time to jump in. The A17 Pro is going to make a noticeable difference for bigger gaming, for more creative processes and things like that. 8 gigs of RAM will be nice as well. And then, of course, jelly scrolling is fixed. There's just a handful of quality of life improvements that just makes the 7th generation iPad mini just better enough that I would go with one of these over like a refurbished 6th generation one. So that's it. That's the new iPad mini. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments below. And if you use an iPad mini, I want to hear from you what use cases you use it for, like what specific tasks. I have a few more iPad mini and iPhone videos coming out very soon, so be sure to subscribe. My thanks to Surfshark for sponsoring this video. If you liked the video, hit the thumbs up button, subscribe if you haven't already, and have a great day.